This is the video demo for Project 8, and Project 8 is actually almost exactly like Project 7, with the exception that there are no vocal tracks on this particular piece. So the first step would be to go to the Canvas page and download the files that you'll need for this project. Then unzip them. You'll notice that they're all mono stems. There are a few tracks in here that were recorded in stereo, for example, the harp and the piano and the drums and other things that were recorded in stereo, but they're here as mono stems with a left and a right. And this is common for a lot of projects. You may get only mono stems, but that's not a big deal. We can position one on the left and one on the right. Anyway, I'm going to open Audition and I'm going to create a new session. I'm going to do it at 44.1, although these files may actually be at 48. But I'll go ahead and do this at 44.1. If you want to do it at 48, that's probably fine too. Always 32-bit. Normally, I'd put the file on the desktop, but in this case, I've got a folder that I created on one of my drives, and I'm going to put it in there. So I'll now import the files, and they're in the Files panel now, and I'm going to drag them out onto the timeline. I have to expand the size of the window so I can see them all. But the next thing I'm going to do is rename the files so I know what they are when I go to the mix window, because I'm going to be spending probably more time in the mix window than the edit window on this project. And it's nice to know what the name of the file is. So after I've done that, I'm going to rearrange the files a little bit. And again, this doesn't change the sound. And if you don't want to spend the time to do this, that's fine. We can keep them alphabetically the way they are now, or reverse alphabetically the way they're displayed there. But I typically would start out with the bass and then the drums and then the rhythm instruments and then the solo instruments toward the right side. But again, it doesn't change the sound one bit, and it's totally up to you whether you want to do that or not. Once I have the tracks on the timeline, one thing I would normally do, I would go through this and clean up bleed. Fortunately, on this project, that's been done for you, so you don't really have to worry about going through and muting bleed like we did on some other projects. Where there's no music, there's really no bleed either, which makes this a little bit easier. So the next thing I'm going to do is to pan the tracks. Keeping the solo things like the violin, I think is going to be the feature since there's no vocals, so I'll keep that in the center. But everything else, kind of pan left and right, especially the stereo files. That's easy. We just pan them left and right, hard left and hard right. Things like the flute and the cello, maybe 25% either way. The guitar and the mandolin, maybe 50% either way. There's really no right answer to the panning, except that you try to balance the tracks so that one side is not dramatically louder than the other, and that keeps the energy fairly even between both sides. Next, I'll go ahead and play this with basically all the faders at 0, and I'm noticing that the level is probably a little louder than I would like to have, so I'm going to just pull down everything about 6 dB and see how that looks. Next, I'll add some EQ, and again, this is a creative decision. On the string instruments like the guitars, the mandolins, the pianos, maybe even the harp, I may want to add some high-end EQ. And also I'll look for something in the low mid, maybe that I can notch out that will make the sound a little bit less tubby and a little bit more focused. Typically I'd add EQ to the overhead, to the cymbals basically in the kit, but he's not really playing cymbals in this one. He's playing more of the toms. So that's why I haven't done much there. Next, it's helpful to determine how long a beat lasts in milliseconds so that I can time that with the echo. And if I look there, the kick drum is playing quarter notes. If I just look at the length of a kick drum beat from one attack to the next, that would give me that length. So I'll do that, and it looks like it's about 486 milliseconds. I'll create 2 aux buses, and the easy way is just to do option B, and I'll do one for reverb and one for echo. And I'll instantiate a reverb and an echo. And I'll probably be using both on this one. When I instantiate the echo, I'll use those parameters. I'll do the 486 for the quarter note and half of that, 243 for the eighth note, so that'll be the right side. On the reverb, the only thing I'll change on the reverb is the decay time, make it about 2,500 milliseconds, which is about 2.5 seconds, which is a nice size room. And I'll also change the amount of dry to 0 and the amount of wet to 100. Then I'll selectively decide what I'd like to have echo and reverb on. I think I'll have echo on the fiddle, or the violin in this case, and maybe reverb on most other things. And you notice that the drum fills and some of those drum accents already have reverb on them. They were just recorded that way. I don't really have to do a lot of mixing, bringing things up or down, but one thing I do want to do is the guitar has the feature in the second verse, and I want to bring the guitar up a little bit. And the easiest way to do that is just to use the yellow line, and I'm going to put some node points in keyframes and bring it up just slightly for the guitar solo, and then back down when the guitar solo is over. I'd also like to add some program limiting to make this a little bit louder all the way through. We're not going to be sending this to a mastering guy, so the program limiting will probably be helpful. and I'm going to use the multiband compressor. As always, look for about 3 dB of gain reduction on any of those 4 bands. If I happen to see the gain reduction only on certain bands, I'll still pull the threshold up evenly on all 4 bands so that the sound quality remains the same. I've not yet saved this project, shame on me, but I'll hit a Command S and it's going to save those files in my session folder, and I can see that they're all there now. I have actually 2 sets. I have the imported files and then the conformed files that had the sample rate changed from 48 to 44.1. So I'll go ahead and play the track and make sure that there's nothing that I want to change. And what's nice about automation is that you don't really have to be doing anything. You can just sit back and listen and then say, yeah, maybe I'll bring the mandolin up or I'll take this down or whatever and do it. And it's very easy to make those tweaks and get it just the way you want it. And in fact, if you listen to it a day later and decide, oh, maybe I want to change that, it's very easy to go back where you started and just make that one change. Anyhow, once I've decided that this is what I want, I'm going to export it. I'll do File, Export, Multitrack Mixdown, entire session. I'm going to do it as an MP3. I'm going to put it on the desktop or someplace where I can find it. And I want a 192 kilobit per second stereo MP3 file. And once I do that, then I'll check it, make sure that there is sound there. There's no picture. This is an audio only project. I'll go to the Canvas page. I'll go to the project page. I'll click on the Submit Assignment button. I'll browse, find the assignment, and upload it. So as always, save your work. This could be a cool piece for your portfolio. Email me if you have any questions at this email address. Thanks.